going on, guys? Welcome back to my F1 22 My Team career mode. We are heading to the Dutch Grand Prix this week in this episode, and it will be our first time around the Zandvoort circuit, and it's going to be an interesting one for sure. We also can see there, if we look at our timeline here on the left, we actually have a couple of pretty important R&D items that are hopefully going to succeed as we head towards the Dutch Grand Prix this week, with that monocoque structure being a big major upgrade that we've been waiting on for quite a while at this point. And we're really hoping that it will take us up one more step on the ladder and kind of help us get back into the fight for having a pretty decent car. Even though we have been absolutely outperforming our car at this point, we are hoping to finally get our car into a much more respectable position as we're setting our activity timeline here for our short week. And so we are excited to go ahead and advance here as we see our monocoque structure actually does come through, as well
we've
as
had the new
our
parts come through the fabrication
which
process.
is another small one,
we'll have
but
them with us for the next Grand Prix.
Very, very important. We'll go ahead and head over to our R&D chart to try and get another set of upgrades going. We're always trying to have the maximum going at all possible. And, these major upgrades are definitely extremely tempting. But with only 1,500 points, we really have to be very picky and choosy. But nonetheless, it's a major improvement. We know we have major steps to take. We'll go ahead and get that going as soon as we can. And it will take a bit of time, but nonetheless, hopefully it will make a difference here as we continue to move forward. We actually get a supplier upgrade from Mercedes, so that's very, very nice. Thank you very much, Mercedes. And we are going to take a look and see what else we have access to. A couple of these smaller ones that we only have 750 R&D points, but we know that every little bit is going to matter here as we continue to try and build our car up. You can now see here that we are actually third from the bottom, and like I was saying, every little thing matters. So, but for now, as our R&D is set, let's go ahead and head towards our facilities, and we're going to look to spend a little bit of our money, and we're going to take this R&D bonus here from the powertrain department. We're truly trying to bump up the amount of R&D points that we're getting per week and per department, and so we're going to be spending our money as quickly as possible, because at this point, spending the money on quality and speed might be the only other option, but at this point, more R&D is definitely the priority for us as we continue to try and learn and grow here in the F1 space. As we've now moved on to our Pirelli Hot Lap here around Zandvoort, we went for the distance checkpoints challenge, and our goal is to hit 8,500 meters here, and hopefully hitting another 1,000 meters or so here. And as we run down the timer here, we actually do manage to get the gold here, but we cut it very, very fine, as you'll see here as we round this final turn for this challenges. And so you can see here that we are absolutely pushing this supercar to the absolute limit, because we know we only have 10 seconds to go 500 meters, and we are doing everything we can to get and nail in and secure that free $100,000, as well as that 1,000 acclaim. And thankfully, we managed to cross it just in the nick of time and actually run all the way wide, absolutely showing zero intentions of braking, and absolutely commit suicide in the barrier there. But nonetheless, it is secured as we now move into our first qualifying session here around Zandvoort, and we are getting our first real experience running on the soft tires around this circuit. And so we're definitely going to be doing our best to find the right lines, kind of find the points to apply the throttle, apply the brake. Our braking points are going to be very important here, as it is a very heavy and especially high speed corner heavy circuit. And we actually come home and actually put in a very good first lap, currently in P4 here, but I know there's quite a few who have yet to really put their first push lap in. And we, at the end of Q1, we actually end up moving on as we land in P14, unable to improve over the course of the first qualifying session. But thankfully, we did just enough. Unfortunately, Piastri unable to make it out of Q1. We have to keep working on that with him. But nonetheless, we will move on to Q2. As we can see here, the weather does not appear to be improving much, and we actually, over the course of this qualifying, were warned that we potentially may start seeing some rain sooner rather than later. And so at this point, we are trying to put in the best lap possible to make sure that, you know, we get a decent time in before or if the rain does come, and so that we can truly try and solidify our position and try and do our best to move on, because our wet weather driving is definitely not the greatest. As we finish our main push lap here, we actually find ourselves in P3 at the moment, although I know that won't necessarily finish that way. We go ahead and we hope that that will be enough to secure our spot into Q3, and it does, as we end up qualifying in P7, once again unable to improve. But nonetheless, on to Q3 we go, absolutely outperforming the car, and we are getting the bonuses from it. At this point, this is our first qualifying session we've ever seen where we do not actually get much of an opportunity to even really set a time. At this point, we had either, due to the weather or, you know, just bad lines of just not being able to put in a lap, we actually had not completed a lap yet. And so at this point, this will be our first lap, and we are trying to get out of the P10 position here, but it will be unable to do so, as I believe we finished here in P10, unable to get a lap together in Q3. Really disappointing, but for us, we will move on, and we know that the points come on Sunday, and qualifying still went very, very well for us in making it into Q3, despite the weather. We will start in the top 10 tomorrow.
With qualifying finished,
as we take a look here at the final standings, George Russell takes pole with Carlos Sainz and Lando Norris rounding out the top 3 positions. Sergio Perez rounds out the second row, and it's actually a bit of a nightmare for Ferrari here, and Charles Leclerc, who is unable to make it into Q3. I think he actually ends up taking a grid penalty, if I'm not mistaken, but we'll see here in a moment. But for now, let's head to the Dutch Grand Prix.
For years, the passionate Dutch fans have been easy to find trackside in races across Europe. Here this weekend, it's even easier to find the Dutch fans, as they have a race to call their own once again. A warm welcome to all of our viewers in the Netherlands and around the globe, of course, as we get underway for the Dutch Grand Prix. Off the back of a fantastic qualifying session, it's time to see how our starting grid looks like for today's race. What a qualifying yesterday for George Russell. He'll start today's race from pole position, and Lando Norris lines up alongside. As we continue through the rest of the grid today, we have Perez, Fernando Alonso, Kevin Magnussen, and Bottas. The rookie, Gasly, Sainz, and Charles Leclerc. Hamilton. They'll be starting further back after an earlier grid penalty. Vettel, Daniel Ricciardo, and Stroll. Latifi, Albon, Esteban Ocon, and Guan Yu Zhou. Tsunoda, Verstappen, they've taken a grid penalty. Mick Schumacher, and Oscar Piastri. It's almost time for those 5 red lights to go out then. Let's see who can prevail today.
We head to our formation lap once again here around Zandvoort. We actually see that Piastri ends up taking a grid penalty due to some new components anyway, so him finishing lower down on qualifying might have been more of a strategic choice more than anything. Before this weekend, we actually took an entirely new set of power unit parts, and so not any penalties obviously, but we actually ended up taking a new power unit almost in its entirety, and so we will not have to worry about that hopefully the rest of this season. But we also see that in the process of others taking grid penalties, we actually see that, you know, we actually end up moving to P7 here on the grid thanks to some grid penalties from those around us, and so we will be starting even further up the order here. And actually, I saw, and just because it was on my mind, Charles Leclerc ends up cracking the top 10 here at the start, so not as much of a disaster for the Scuderia here, as Piastri ends up finishing and rounding out this grid. We will move on to the 5 red lights here around the Dutch Grand Prix, and we are going to be trying to once again make some moves to start this race. So here we go to 5 red lights here in the Dutch Grand Prix. Lights are out and we are away here around Zandvoort. So we move down towards the first corner. We make our traditional, at this point, dive bomb up the inside, and actually do end up clipping Fernando Alonso's back wheel there, which absolutely unseated his car. And we now find ourselves once again, as we saw in Spa last episode, that that early move up the inside of the first corner can prove very fruitful, and we now have the opportunity to once again have a decent result. Although there have been plenty of races this season where we've made good moves at the beginning but unable to hold a position for the long term, and so this is one we're hoping to change. We don't need any safety car luck, or we don't need any weather any weather abnormalities to assist us, and we're going to prove that we can do it all on our own now that we've started to once again move up the car performance chart. And so at this point we are settling in and trying to prove that we are here to fight and we're not going to be taken lightly. So as we round here around the final couple of corners, as we finish our first lap, we settle into P4 just ahead of the Haas of Kevin Magnussen and following the Red Bull of Sergio Perez, and we'll try and settle in and make something happen here in the Dutch Grand Prix. And we know that we're going to have to work hard for this, but we know that we can do it, as we proved last episode. So here's to doing it again. Moving ahead here to lap 6, you can see that not a whole lot has really changed. It's kind of been a war of attrition at this point, as we can see that actually the Red Bull of Sergio Perez and I are on the medium tire, while the rest of the this 5 stack of cars are on the soft tire. So I think at this point we've relegated ourselves to the strategy of waiting for the soft tires ahead of us to sort of wear out. And it's at this point that we start to really settle into that decision, trying to make the most out of being on the harder compound tire than those ahead of us. And so I think the Red Bull and I, Checo and I, are really preying on the fact that these softs are going to wear out sooner rather than later, and we're going to inherit some positions. So we don't necessarily need to be super aggressive here to start, and we really just need to not make any major mistakes. And as you can see, I found myself in a bit of a bubble here, unable to take advantage of DRS, but at the same time, thanks to the proximity of the two ahead of me, I don't think they're able to get too far away, as they are working to defend and attack each other. So at this point, like I said, we are absolutely just content to just settle in and really try and not to make any major mistakes, and try and take advantage of the early pit stops made by those ahead of us. And so even though we are running in P4, we will actually inherit a few spots here soon as the soft compound starts to wear away. And so at this point, we are also keeping an eye on the weather, as it definitely doesn't look the most welcoming here in the Netherlands. And so we're trying to keep everything in mind while also not making too many major either strategy mistakes or personal driving mistakes. So we're absolutely just trying to settle in here and try and keep tabs on the back of the 2 drivers ahead of us, as we don't want to be too far off the pace when they do end up making their stops. So while we are settling in and not necessarily pushing 100%, we are absolutely trying to push our car a little bit more than probably the 2 ahead of us are, as our car still is really underperforming compared to the rest of the grid. So for as long as we can keep them within striking distance, we know that we can make some moves happen. So as once again, as we head towards the finish of lap 7 here, we're going to be keeping an eye on every end of lap antics to see if anyone makes a dive for the pits. And as we finish lap 7, we continue to move forward without any of those opportunities. So we will just continue our trip around Zandvoort here, and we'll wait to see when the soft tires truly start to fall off enough. As we jump forward again here to lap 11, the end of lap 11, we can see that our medium tires are actually starting to fall off pretty hard, and it's been really surprising that no one had pitted yet up to this point. But we can see now that the soft tires have actually fallen off, and we have entered into the opportunity we were waiting for these soft to pit ahead of us. And so now we inherit P2 here on the grid, following the other Red Bull of Sergio Perez here around Zandvoort. And now is when we finally get to try and create some space here, and we absolutely need to try and create as much space as possible behind us, as now we open up a nice what is almost 13-second gap to a surprise runner in P3 here of Sebastian Vettel, who is currently, just over 13 seconds behind us. And so if we can try and take advantage of those cold, hard tires that were put on to those ahead of us, we can try and open up enough of a gap where we won't run into any issues down the line. And so we now need to decide when we are going to pit, and we're going to try and run. Oh, Seb, no, as Seb falls out of this session. Hopefully it wasn't anything too major, but he was running in P3 and unfortunately is now out of the Dutch Grand Prix. Very unlucky for the 4-time world champion. But like I was saying, at this point, we know that we have a long way to go here around Zandvoort as we move forward to lap 17, and we are still on our original our medium tires, I should say. And we made the decision at this point, are we going to continue on the medium tires and overtake Sergio Perez here, who pits for those hard tires, to try and get a little greedy here, and we now lead the Dutch Grand Prix, and try and take advantage of those cold tires now, because we have a very sizable gap to the rest of the field starting after Checo, as we in theory could be able to maintain a top 3 position should we pit at this point. And so now with Checo on those hard tires, those cold hard tires, which we know are so difficult to warm up, this is an opportunity for us to potentially build up that lead and get a little greedy here and try to maximize the amount of laps we have on these medium tires, and really try and get a little greedy and see if we can potentially pull out another podium here in back-to-back weekends. And I think we're riding that high and a little bit of that overconfidence potentially. Podium in Spa, we're trying to podium here again in the Netherlands, as these medium tires are absolutely starting to fall off here. You can see that it's so difficult to stop and get that grip into these corners here, as we're now running on 18 full laps on these medium tires. We passed our pit window a few times, and you can see here that maybe it was quite a bit of folly here, and we actually we will die for the pits here instead of running another lap, as we kind of intended almost after Checo did pit at the beginning of the last lap. And so we will end up diving in here for the hards, and I actually unfortunately got a little distracted here and actually missed the timing here on the pit stop, so it will be an extra slow stop for us. Thankfully it is only a 3.3 second stop, nothing too worrying, but that does allow the rest of the field to catch up, and we actually come out of the pits here in P5, and we will absolutely have another position hounding us with Lewis Hamilton absolutely sending us on the inside here. We have nothing we can do to defend against that, as we have just come out on these cold hard tires. And it's at this point I think we've realized that we've kind of made a pretty large mistake, as we now find ourselves running in P6 after leading for a full lap, and potentially with a little bit of grandeur in our eyes and in our hearts. We now find ourselves in a fight as we move forward here to lap 23 of 36 here in the Netherlands. We've actually lost another position here to Max Verstappen, and we currently sit in P8, but that doesn't mean we're not going to fight back, because at this point our hard tires have warmed up just enough that we can really start to attack and push, and we get a little too aggressive there and actually run very wide, allowing the Red Bull to kind of hold out on the inside from us. But we are going to attempt to make a big dive up here around the high bank turn here, trying to follow up Leclerc and try and hold off Verstappen as much as we can, as he actually performs the switchback on us, gets that racing line, that inside line, and that Red Bull is just too much of a car for us. We will deploy some ERS. But look at him, really thought about just sending one up the inside, but at this point we know that our mistake is made and we are going to have to live with it, and now we need to settle in and focus up and try and hold on to the best position we can here. And although our tires are newer than those ahead of us, we know that we really struggle on these hard tires. Even if they are warmed up, we know that they really do not perform the same as the soft compound or the medium compound. And so we have a long road ahead of us here on these last 12 laps around Zandvoort. And so as we will continue to attack as best we can, we know that it is going to be a tough hill to climb back up the ladder here, and it is going to be a tough one for us, as we get a great runoff here out of the last corner, and actually trying to send one up the inside here of Max Verstappen, who squeezes us to the inside, unable to get back to the racing line. We have to brake extra early. We kind of push him a little bit wide. I think he thought he could get another switchback on us, and as he backed out trying to reform, we kind of parked it perfectly on the apex of that turn, and so we were able to hold the position here, and we now are back in front of the Red Bull. But a nice bit of wheel spin coming out of that banked turn really puts us right back in the clutches of the current reigning World Drivers Champion, and he is absolutely chasing his Drivers Champion rival in Leclerc, and I'm sure he is not appreciating us holding him up any more than we have to, as we actually run a little wide there on the curbs and actually get held up due to a little bit of beaching on those curbs, and so that actually also slows us down just enough. But I think Verstappen wasn't expecting that and had to back out a little bit more than he was expecting, just due to our erraticness. But here, as he gets a good helping of DRS, we actually very late on the brakes trying to protect from Verstappen. We run through the gravel trap, and Max has no issues getting on the brakes, and really just that was that. There was a no nonsense move. We made a mistake, and he was there to take advantage. But nonetheless, we have hopefully a few more laps here to make up for it. We were unable to get DRS here down the pit straight, and so at this point we are just hoping to get back within that 1 second barrier. But as we move forward here to lap 36 and 36, we can see that we now currently stand in P7 thanks to some DNFs to those ahead, and we are fighting off the Alfa Romeo of Valtteri Bottas, as we will hopefully come through these final few corners to finish here in P7, as Sergio Perez makes the correct strategy calls today and wins the Dutch Grand Prix. Max Verstappen ends up taking the fastest lap just ahead of us, and thankfully we will have just enough defensive prowess here to finish here in P7, our best finish if you take out our podium last week to date. We knew we could have had more, we probably should have had more, but at the end of the day, we are happy with points, and we are happy with that top 10 finish here as we finish in P7. Congratulations to Sergio on his win here in the Netherlands. I'm sure his teammate Max Verstappen is going to be very happy to celebrate that win with him here. But nonetheless, we actually see a McLaren here also on the podium and a Ferrari there at the same time, and so it looks as though Lando Norris and what I would assume is Carlos Sainz also joining Sergio Perez here on the podium. So we get a bit of an unorthodox trio here on the podium here in the Dutch Grand Prix, so that's always exciting and always a little bit fun. We always like to see some different winners here, and here we go. We see Checo walking out onto the podium celebration, and congratulations to him once again. An absolutely great win, a great podium for Lando Norris there, as well as Carlos Sainz. And we're heading home a little bit dejected and a little bit of hurt and pride, as we knew we should have had more, and it was really just strategy calls and a little bit of overconfidence that really bogged us down here around Zandvoort. Unfortunate, but nonetheless, we will learn from this and we will move on and move forward. So congratulations to the podium once again. Let's go ahead, let's take a look at the final standings here. Let's see where we ended up. Like you said, P7 just ahead of Bottas, and actually Charles Leclerc ends up falling down to P9 to finish. And so we, we start in 7th, we finish in 7th. All in all, it's a good day. Max Verstappen, though, starting P20, finishing P6, that's absolutely worthy of driver of the day. What a race from him. Let's go ahead and scroll down, see where Piastri ended up finishing. Ended up finishing P19, definitely not what we had in mind when we started the weekend, but at the same time, our car is absolutely not necessarily the best, or it is even could be qualified as the worst. So we know we have a long way to go for him. We currently still hold on to P10 here in the driver standings and hold on tight to P7 here, and the constructors still chasing down the Alfa Romeo. So nonetheless, as we move here off of the Dutch Grand Prix, we're excited to continue to move forward, continue to develop this car, and continue to get better ourselves. It'll also be noted that from here on, I'm going to start taking up the AI difficulty on the game. At least as of this point, it's starting to seem like we're overperforming just a bit. But for now, that'll do it here for episode 14. I will see you guys in the next one.